The first red flag wasn't the security guard giving me that apologetic, tight-lipped nod like I just walked into my own funeral. It wasn't even my ID badge going dead in my hand like it suddenly forgot who I was. No. The real gut punch came when I opened the door to my lab and found a stranger sitting at my desk, feet kicked up, sipping from a mug that Reed World's #1 innovator hadn't even made it past the threshold when he looked up, grinned like a possum on Red Bull, and said, "You must be Lisa. I'm Blake, the new director of innovation." The new director, I blinked. Once. Twice. 3 months ago, I was running this lab. My name was on the door, the patents, the payroll allocations. I was the one who built the gene-tagging tech that kept this startup afloat when our Series B looked like a flaming bag of dog poop on Sand Hill Road. It poured 5 years of 20-hour weeks and 2 missed Christmases into this concrete bunker of pipettes and prototypes. And now Blake, with his Banana Republic button-down and mediocre-smelling cologne, was sitting in my chair like it was always his. He stood up with theatrical pity and pulled a manila envelope from the desk drawer, my drawer. HR wanted to do this more formally, but I figured it'd be more efficient to hand-deliver. "Welcome back. Consider yourself already replaced." Inside the envelope, termination papers, signature lines, severance clause pre-filled with the kind of insulting number you offer someone you assume won't fight back. I didn't yell, didn't slam the door. I just smiled, grabbed the cheap ballpoint pen from his mug, and signed the visitor log on the counter outside, not the exit form. I handed it back to security and asked if I needed an escort out. The guard didn't say a word, just buzzed me through the lobby doors like he'd been rehearsing it for weeks. And that was the end of it, on the surface. If you're still with me, hey, thank you. I know 95% of folks listen to these stories and never hit that subscribe button. But it really does help the team out when you like or follow. Keeps the lights on, the coffee brewing, and the revenge well-researched. Now, where was I? Right. I drove home with that envelope-riding shotgun, like a dead pigeon someone had wrapped in corporate jargon. Didn't cry, didn't call anyone. I just parked, walked into my apartment, poured myself a whiskey the color of bad intentions, and pulled out the original copy of my employment contract from the filing cabinet under my Wi-Fi router. Clause 9.3. I hadn't thought about it in years. Hidden in plain sight, between vacation accrual and non-disclosure, the sentence I'd fought to insert during onboarding 5 years ago when they were desperate, and I still had leverage. All research and patentable work shall remain property of the originating party, unless explicitly transferred. I read it once, then again, as the ice cubes in my glass did slow ballet in the amber liquid. There were no transfer documents. Not then, not now, and I hadn't just originated the research. I was the research. Every line of code, every lab notebook, every clinical pilot, every patent application with L. Halperin scrawled across the bottom in my sleep-deprived handwriting. 6 filings in total, and not a single one with a transfer of rights. I smiled. They had no idea what they'd done. You see, while Blake was busy printing new business cards and pretending to know what the hell polymerase chain reactions were, he just fired the one person holding the keys to the IP kingdom. I wasn't going to storm the gates. I was going to let them walk straight into the fire, blindfolded, smiling, and holding their own gasoline cans. The game hadn't ended when I left the building. It had just begun. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat in my kitchen like a ghost that refused to pass on, the termination papers spread across the table like a bad tarot reading. The fridge hummed. The streetlight outside blinked like it had a secret. In the middle of it all sat me, and a piece of paper that, 5 years ago, I made damn sure was written with a scalpel, not a crayon. Clause 9.3. It sounded so dry on the page. All research and patentable work shall remain property of the originating party, unless explicitly transferred. Legalese, tucked between sick leave policies and IP confidentiality, like it was nothing. But I remembered everything about the day we negotiated that clause. It was the 3rd meeting I'd had with their founding attorney. I was a nobody with a PhD and a pipeline of genetic edits that could rewrite how tumors responded to immunotherapy. They were a hot mess of ambition and venture fumes. They wanted speed. I wanted protection. So I slid clause 9.3 across the table and said, if this company goes belly up or gets bought, I want my name on what I built. Lawyer raised an eyebrow and muttered something about standard procedure, but I held my ground. Funny how your future hides in the fine print you fight for when no one's watching. Back in the present, I went hunting. Deep. I dug through old email threads, internal Slack archives, even that dusty box in my closet labeled work crap open if sued. I pulled every filing I'd ever submitted to the USPTO. 6 patents, all tied to the same core tech, a viral delivery system for synthetic RNA. It was dry, nerdy stuff to most folks, but to investors, it was gold-plated snake oil with a side of Nobel buzz. Each application had my name, just mine, no transfer docs, no co-signatures, no reassignment of rights, not even a memo claiming ownership. It was like they never thought I'd leave, like they never thought I'd matter enough to protect themselves. That's when I knew something bigger was brewing. Because if they were dumb enough to fire me without checking the legal status of their flagship IP, they were dumb enough to pitch it, publicly, boldly, recklessly. I opened up LinkedIn, searched for the company's page. Nothing about my departure. Just some glittery nonsense about leadership transformation and next-gen pipeline expansion under Blake Whitaker. I swear, every word that man says sounds like it's been marinated in TED Talk syrup. Then I clicked on their latest press release. They were preparing for Series C, $40 million, $40 million based on a biotech platform whose IP had never been signed over, whose foundational research was still sitting under my name in a federal database. It wasn't just ego, it was identity theft. And now, it was leverage. Adrenaline didn't hit like a car crash. It crept in like a slow leak, steady, silent, dangerous. I didn't pace. I didn't call anyone. I just reached for my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Yvonne, it's Lisa Halperin. You still doing IP litigation? A pause. Then, Lisa, thought you fell off the map. I smiled. I was on sabbatical. I'm back now. And I've got something you're going to want to see. Met the next morning at a diner out by the university. Same place we used to go when I was begging for pro bono help during my postdoc days. She ordered black coffee and eggs over easy. I slid a file across the table. She opened it, eyes flicking from clause to patent to filing date to highlighted Slack message. You still have all this? She asked. I don't throw away leverage, I said. She leaned back, coffee in hand, looking at me like I'd just handed her a live grenade wrapped in ribbon. This clause is clean. They screwed up. Badly, monumentally. We didn't high-five, we didn't toast. We just stared at the ticking time bomb between us, both knowing exactly how this was going to play out if we were patient. Because the thing about IP theft is, it only hurts when it's public. And these fools, they were about to go very public. I didn't storm the gates. That would have been too easy, way too loud. No, I did something much scarier. I got quiet, controlled, like a sniper checking wind speed before the trigger pull. I didn't post on LinkedIn. I didn't email HR. I didn't call Blake and ask what the hell he thought he was doing. I let them forget I existed. That's the best camouflage in corporate America, silence. But behind that silence, I was tracking everything. I created a burner email, new name, new profile, subscribed to every investor newsletter I could find. I set up Google alerts with keywords that would have made compliance teams sweat. Series C, RNA delivery platform, Blake Whitaker, patent, and my personal favorite, my own name, Lisa Halperin. Every ping felt like a drumbeat. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Then, 2 weeks in, I got the first real hit. An industry insider blog posted a teaser for an upcoming investor conference, Breakthrough Biotech to announce game-changing RNA platform at Series C roundtable, $40M on the table. No company name, but the phrasing was familiar. Too familiar. I clicked through. Scanned the slide screenshots embedded in the post. Slide 4, there it was. A diagram showing vector delivery rates in oncology applications. The same one I built 2 years ago using my own experimental data. Same font. Same layout. My initials were still watermarked in the bottom right corner. LHREV3. Not even removed, just overlooked, like I was nothing more than a former employee who wouldn't notice her own fingerprints on the murder weapon. My hands didn't shake, not even a twitch. That was the moment it all calcified. The grief, the insult, the betrayal. It didn't hurt anymore, it just made me sharp. I downloaded the deck, archived it, sent it to Yvonne with a short message. Let them keep going. The higher they climb, the harder they'll beg. She replied 2 minutes later, just a single line, copy that. From there, I started cataloging everything like I was building a case for God. I tracked every press release, every pitch announcement, every conference attendance. If Blake sneezed near a startup blog, I knew about it before the Kleenex hit the floor. I created a timeline, just a basic spreadsheet at first, then layered it with links, timestamps, and correlating patent references. They weren't just using my work, they were building on it, layering vague new buzzwords like biosynergy and immune harmonization onto what I'd already tested, refined, and locked in filings the company never owned. And the best part, they had no idea. They thought I was done, that I'd walked out like a good little cog, that I'd accepted the box of my things. Pathetic severance, the HR autoresponder. I started going back through their SEC Form D disclosures. The Series C raise was real. They'd already pulled in a few million in commitments. That meant due diligence. That meant paperwork. That meant at least one outside firm had seen my patents and either didn't connect the dots or was about to. And when the right investor started asking the wrong questions, boom, Vaughn and I decided to wait until after the investor pitch was over, maximize exposure. She flagged a contact in one of the auditing firms likely to be involved. Not an accusation, just a tip, a little breadcrumb. In the meantime, I watched Blake on a live stream panel hosted by a mid-tier VC firm. He wore that same smug, ill-fitting confidence like a borrowed tux, talking about disruptive therapeutic frontiers and the genius of our team's legacy work. Legacy? He was talking about me. And that smug little smile on his face as he answered softball questions from sycophantic moderators. That was the exact smile he wore when he handed me my termination papers. So I smiled back, through the screen. Then I clicked the folder where all the evidence lived and renamed it, Blake's Downfall, because I didn't just want my job back. I wanted to own the ashes. By the time May rolled around, Blake was being treated like the second coming of Jonas Salk in a Patagonia vest. Every industry rag was parroting the same regurgitated narrative. Blake Whitaker, the visionary behind Synthura's IP portfolio, leads the charge into RNA's golden age. Visionary, the man couldn't spell cytokine without autocorrect, but he sure knew how to wear a tailored blazer and nod thoughtfully on stage. The CEO, Mark Halpern, master of buzzwords and bourbon-soaked decision-making, started referring to Blake in public statements as the architect of our next-gen platform. Not a contributor, not a leader, the architect, as if Blake had personally assembled every nucleotide with his bare hands while humming the national anthem. It would have been funny if it wasn't so insulting. Worse, when I tried to go the official route, file a request for neutral arbitration, just to clarify IP rights, HR ghosted me. No response, nothing. The same department that used to send me passive-aggressive birthday e-cards now couldn't find the reply button. After the third unanswered email, I had Yvonne send one from her firm's domain, just to make things spicy. We received a curt response from legal within 24 hours. At this time, the company believes all obligations to Miss Halperin have been fulfilled. Fulfilled. Like a box of Amazon regrets. Vaughn's advice? Let them cook. They're using proprietary materials in publicly promoted assets, she said, sipping chamomile tea like we were discussing wallpaper. And now they've been officially notified. That's going to matter. How long do we wait? Until they give us something they can't unpublish. I hated waiting. I'm a builder. I like to fix, iterate, do. Now I had to sit on my hands while Blake strutted around like a peacock in front of every investor that could spell liquidity event. So I got creative. I reached out to Amira. Amira used to be my assistant. Smart as hell, sharper than most of the exec team, and loyal to a fault, until the reorg shuffled her over to some new culture and communications team that reported to HR. We hadn't spoken since I was let go. I assumed she'd been told to keep her distance. But when I sent her a message through Signal, she responded in less than a minute. Jesus, Lisa, I thought you disappeared. I was told to. Yeah, well, Blake said you took a buyout. I almost spit my coffee. A what? Yeah, he told the staff you were done, said you'd moved on to better things. I laughed, long and low. Can you still access the internal decks? Pause. I shouldn't. But can you? A longer pause. I didn't hear this from you. The slides for next month's investor conference are already in final review. Does it include RN Avance? Yes. With efficacy data? Yes. Send me a screenshot. 3 hours later, a cropped image showed up in my inbox. Slide 7. The same delivery method I pioneered. Slightly rebranded, but my test groups, my dosage timeline, even my original label formatting, intact. They hadn't even bothered to change the color scheme. She added one line, they're calling it Whitaker's Cascade model. I closed my laptop before I put a hole in the drywall. He wasn't just stealing my work. He was retrofitting it with his name like some biotech Frankenstein. And everyone at the company was going along with it because nobody wanted to be the one who pointed out the emperor was wearing my lab coat. Amira messaged again. They're presenting at Biotech Now West, June 9th. Main stage. CEO and Blake both speaking. That was it. That was the unpublishable thing. A high-profile investor pitch under live stream using IP they didn't own. They'd be marketing my science under false pretenses to venture funds, hedge groups, and pharmaceutical execs who'd eat a scandal alive if it meant sinking a competitor's round. Thank you, I wrote back. You okay? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing. I'm going to be. Then I called Yvonne. Got our window. Mark your calendar for June 9th. Her voice didn't even crack. Showtime. 2 weeks before Biotech Now West, Yvonne sent a single envelope with no return address to a law firm known for conducting IP due diligence on behalf of big-ticket investors. Inside, a curated sampler platter of receipts, screenshots of pitch decks, patent numbers, date-stamped lab notebook scans, copy of the original employment contract with clause 9.3 highlighted in neon yellow like the world's most passive-aggressive warning sign. We didn't sign it, didn't watermark it, just enough to make someone uncomfortable. 3 days later, the ripple began. Due diligence teams are like bloodhounds with MBAs. You don't need to tell them what to find, just give them a whiff of a problem, and they'll start digging like it's bonus season. Whisper about Synthura's IP landed somewhere inside Halpern, and Wright LLP, the boutique firm handling Series C for Blake's crew. All it took was one associate cross-referencing patent filings with USPTO data, and suddenly the architect of innovation was sitting on blueprints he didn't draft. First, they spotted my name, then my initials, then my timestamps, then 6 filings, every one of them listing Lisa Halperin as the sole inventor. No co-signers, no assignments, just me, the lone originator of the company's entire RNA delivery platform. From there, things started unraveling like a bad comb-over in a wind tunnel. The firm reached out to Synthura's in-house legal team with some routine clarifications. Innocent little questions like, can you confirm the IP assignment for patent hash 674,492B? Do you have documentation showing transfer of rights from Dr. Halperin to Synthura Corp? Cue panic. Legal replied with vague hand-waving, asking for more time, citing internal reviews. But internally, they were flailing, because someone finally realized they'd built a $40M house of cards on a patent portfolio they didn't own. And worse, they'd pitched it, broadcast it, sold it to investors under someone else's name. Mine. That's when the emails started. Frantic, late-night pings from the general counsel to Mark Halpern, the CEO, who was halfway through a wine-soaked leadership retreat in the Dolomites with his second wife and their yoga instructor. He didn't respond at first. Probably thought it was another compliance fire he could douse with a memo and a whiskey. Then legal sent the real message, the one with screenshots from the auditors showing my patents, my initials, my work, called in at 3:14 a.m. Eastern. The email header said it all: urgent patent exposure. Potential ownership discrepancy. Action required immediately. It was too late. The investor teams were already in contact with external counsel. The questions were out in the open now, and they couldn't be answered with buzzwords or Blake's smug slide decks. This wasn't about miscommunication, it was about potential fraud. And then it came. A calendar invite. Subject: emergency board call, patent review issue. Participants: CEO, legal board chair, general counsel, external IP counsel, and me. Lisa Halperin, not former employee, not disgruntled ex. Invite status required. I read it twice before forwarding it to Yvonne with a one-line message. Told you they'd come knocking. She responded with a gif of popcorn popping. I should have felt nervous, vindicated, angry. Instead, I felt composed, calm, like the eye of a storm I had mapped out 6 weeks ago and watched crawl toward them inch by inch. I took the day before the meeting to print everything: contracts, patents, screenshots, the napkin sketch of my Cascade vector I'd drawn 3 years ago in a diner at 2 a.m. with coffee and insomnia for company. I organized the binder, labeled every tab. There would be no confusion, no ambiguity. Blake thought I was a ghost. Tomorrow, I'd be the Reaper. Board call started exactly at 9:00 a.m. Eastern, with the kind of sterile punctuality that only true panic can achieve. I dialed in from my lawyer's office, camera off, microphone muted, binder open beside me like a loaded weapon. Yvonne sat across from me, sipping something herbal and deadly. Her posture was relaxed. Mine was stone. The first 10 minutes were corporate kabuki theater. Warm greetings, stilted chuckles, nervous throat clearing from legal like someone trying to break bad news to a mafia don without getting shot. Mark Halpern joined from Italy, still on vacation, his background a pixelated blur of expensive glassware and bad decisions. Blake was on too, audio only, which was probably wise. Cowards blink first. I understand we have an issue requiring immediate attention. The board chair began, her tone clipped and surgical. Yes, thanks, Susan, General Counsel stammered. As you may be aware, during the final stages of investor due diligence, several questions emerged regarding the proprietary status of our RNA delivery, IP, specifically the patents associated with the RN Avance platform. He was trying to keep it vague, ambiguous, like maybe the documents were just misfiled or a clerical error had occurred. Some intern had spilled Red Bull on a signature page. Oopsie daisy. Then the external counsel cleared her throat. I've reviewed all available documentation provided by Synthura's legal team. May I read a section from Dr. Halpern's original employment agreement? Please, the board chair said. The lawyer didn't pause. Clause 9.3. All research and patentable work shall remain property of the originating party, unless explicitly transferred in writing. Are no such transfer documents in the files Synthura has submitted. Furthermore, all 6 core patents tied to the RN Avance platform list Dr. Lisa Halpern as the sole inventor and owner, with no legal reassignment on record. Silence. Then Mark's voice came through the speaker. Croaky, disoriented. What does that mean? Legal hesitated. This was the moment, the line where the noose tightens or someone cuts the rope. He chose honesty. Too late. Still, it means she owns the patents, all of them. The silence that followed was so pure, so oxygenless, you could hear the collective sphincter of an entire boardroom tightening through the fiber optic cables. Someone muttered, Jesus Christ. Another voice, a younger board member, maybe a VC analyst, asked, then what have we been pitching? That's when I unmuted. The truth, I said, voice flat. You've been pitching the truth. You just forgot who it belongs to. All their little zoom squares blinked in my periphery like frightened game pieces. Blake's remained dark. Coward. Mark tried to salvage it. Lisa, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. We can work something out. There's room at the table for everyone, don't, I interrupted. You had your chance. You handed me a termination packet like I was a lab tech with a caffeine addiction, not the woman who built the platform you're selling. Legal attempted damage control. Perhaps we could. Visit the severance terms, retroactively. Retroactive severance won't cut it, Yvonne said coolly, finally speaking. What we're discussing now is a licensing agreement. Non-exclusive. Time-limited, market rate. Indexed annually, more silence. Then, from the board chair, so you're saying, Synthura doesn't currently own any of the IP we've just spent the last quarter marketing. Yvonne answered before I could. That's correct. Mark's voice cracked. Jesus, we could be sued. Vaughn smiled, not that they could see it. Only if Lisa feels generous. I watched it all with the same expression Blake wore when he fired me. Calm, smug, certain. But unlike Blake, I had the receipts. I didn't bluff. I didn't posture. I just let them hear the sound of their own oxygen running out. The call ended with a promise to reconvene after further internal review. Translation: after they finished vomiting into expensive trash bins and Googling, can you reverse pitch IP you don't own? I closed my laptop. Trap set. Trap sprung. Now we negotiate. The offer came less than 48 hours after the call. A polite, overgroomed email from Synthura's head of legal with the subject line reinstatement proposal urgent. No apology in the body, just a lot of high-level corporate niceties designed to sound like a peace offering when it was really a white flag dressed in marketing copy. They wanted me back. Same title, same pay. A new lab, they said, full control of your team again. As if I was supposed to be flattered by the idea of crawling back into the very cage they tried to bury me in. Yvonne read it first. She was already laughing before she finished paragraph 2. I guess this is their version of groveling, she muttered. I'm not going back, I said. Didn't think so. Instead, we drafted our own terms. A non-exclusive licensing agreement, full access to the RN Avance platform, and related methodologies for a limited duration, 3 years, renewable by mutual consent. All at market rate, of course, with annual escalators tied to biotech index performance. Retroactive fees due from the day of my termination. Any IP derivative created during that window must be disclosed and reviewed for dependency before internal patent filings. And all public materials must now cite licensed under the Halpern Protocol. We sent it at 8:03 a.m. on a Monday. Legal responded at 3:12 p.m., predictably rattled. "This is aggressive," their counsel wrote. "No," Yvonne replied. "This is generous." The board didn't even flinch, not a single question about the rate sheet or the licensing window. They knew what the cost of silence was now. Investor interest had already cooled. 2 funds were reassessing alignment. One wanted third-party verification of patent integrity before sending final wire instructions. Every day they hesitated cost them more than my entire ask. By Thursday, the agreement was signed. I sat in Yvonne's office across from the framed photo of her bulldog, sipping iced coffee through a metal straw and listening to her read the final clauses aloud, just to make sure everything landed where it needed to. She flipped the last page, slid the packet into a folder, and smiled. That's one way to get a raise. An hour later, I got a new email, this time from HR. A full-page apology, signed by someone I'd never met, because the original team had apparently transitioned. I read the first 2 lines, skimmed the rest, in corporate remorse language dressed up in empathy robes. Then came the real prize. Attached was a notification of staff change. Blake Whitaker, no longer employed by Synthura as of date. No headline, no farewell post on LinkedIn, no gold watch or staged handshake photo. Just gone. I imagined him packing up his standing desk, confused and red-faced, muttering something about misunderstood vision, while the new intern handed him a cardboard box. He didn't want the optics of public firing. That was fine. I wasn't after noise, just leverage. Now every internal report with my platform would legally cite my name. Every investor deck would include licensing terms. Every derivative patent would pass through a contract filter I owned. Mark sent a one-liner through legal 2 days later, glad we could work something out. I didn't respond. Not directly. Vaughn sent a PDF with 1 sentence in bold. All future contact must be coordinated through counsel. I wasn't their employee anymore. I was their vendor. A very, very expensive one. The ink on the licensing agreement was barely dry when the internal machine started sputtering back to life, with one very important modification. I wasn't listed as staff in the org chart anymore. I was now a line item under procurement, under vendors. Technically, Synthura didn't have in-house IP anymore. They had access to it on a lease at a price with conditions. I set up a small consulting firm, just me, a paralegal, and a project manager named Deshawn who used to run ops at Genomics Lab before getting fed up with corporate ping-pong tables and unpaid overtime. We called it Halperin Bioworks. Logo, a strand of RNA folding into a fist. Kind of a joke, kind of not. Synthura signed the vendor onboarding packet a week after the licensing deal closed. Suddenly, the same internal teams that had once copied my slides and slapped Blake's name on them were now required to submit quarterly feedback reports to me. Every dev roadmap touching RN Avance had to get reviewed by my firm. I got weekly digests with my name in the header. Licensor review notes. Action required. It's like watching your ex try to make lasagna using your grandmother's recipe, but this time they had to pay you for every noodle. Inside their internal docs, my name kept surfacing. Not under former employees, not buried in footnotes. Just licensor, Halperin Bioworks, Lisa Halperin, PhD. The first report I reviewed included a section titled Legacy Pathways, developed under Halperin era. They were tiptoeing now, afraid to misspell my name, let alone misattribute my work. And then Mark tried to be cute. Late one Friday night, my signal pinged with a private message. Unknown number, but I recognized the cadence. Mark Halperin, can we talk off the record? I stared at the screen for a full minute, then slid the phone across the table to Deshawn, who raised an eyebrow. CEO? Yup. What'd he say? Wants to talk. Off the record. Deshawn chuckled, then took a bite of his sandwich. Gonna ghost him or go full Shakespeare? I smiled and typed. Lisa Halperin, I only speak through counsel now. Delivered. Read. No reply, there it was. Not a scream, not a lawsuit. Just a boundary so sharp it could shave the desperation off his ego. The power shift wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause or confetti or a golden nameplate. It came with silence, with compliance, with process changes and rewrites of training modules, and NDA revisions that now included my firm's language. I wasn't on their team anymore. I was the terms. I still read their public press releases out of habit, each one more vague than the last. Partnering with world-class IP holders, leveraging proven delivery mechanisms. The investors didn't care whose name was on the paperwork. They cared that Synthura could deliver. And now they could, because I let them. Under contract, under review, under me. I'd returned, yes, but not to the building, not to the badge or the basement lab with the squeaky autoclave. I returned as leverage incarnate, not employed, empowered. The final board call was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Eastern, but I was already logged in by 7:15, camera off, audio muted, watching the participant list light up one by one like a countdown to combustion. Everyone was there. Chairwoman Susan, 2 investor reps, outside counsel, legal, and of course Mark, the man of the hour. His video was on, but the man looked 20 pounds lighter and 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. Stress had pulled the smug right off his face. This wasn't a regular board meeting. It was a triage session, a real-time autopsy on a PR nightmare they were trying to keep internal. The whispers were already out. 2 investor groups had paused their funding and demanded a clause be added to the term sheet, ensuring that all foundational IP has been verified, assigned, and legally secured. Which, of course, it hadn't. Because it never was. Because Mark and Blake had bet the house on a woman they thought they could fire into silence. The agenda listed me as external stakeholder, Halperin Bioworks. It was the first time my name appeared on a board doc, without being buried in footnotes or legalese. First slide, summary of licensing obligations. Second slide, a graph forecasting revenue loss if I pulled out. Third, contingency planning if they couldn't renew the license next cycle. By the time Mark unmuted, you could smell the resignation through the screen. He didn't look at the camera, didn't even look at the slides. Just stared into some off-screen abyss and whispered the line like it physically hurt to say, "She owns every patent we've been pitching for 3 years." His voice cracked mid-sentence. No one rushed to cover for him. Silence. Then the lead investor leaned forward, glasses catching the light just enough to look menacing. "Well," he said coolly, "then I suggest you renegotiate with your new boss." No one laughed. No one corrected him. They all knew exactly what he meant. I unmuted, slow and deliberate. The square around my face lit up on their grid like a loaded chamber. I let the silence hang for just a second longer. I looked straight into the camera and said, "Funny. I thought I'd be replaced. Turns out I was the product all along." Then I clicked leave meeting. And just like that, the board disappeared from view, the weight of their desperation collapsing into a blank screen. I sat back in my chair, the city still waking up behind me, sunlight spilling across the stack of signed contracts on my desk. Somewhere in that building, Mark was probably pouring a drink. HR was probably updating internal documentation to reflect external partnerships. Someone in PR was probably Googling synonyms for licensor to use in the next press release. And me, I opened a new file. Titled it, Expansion Protocol Phase 2, because this wasn't revenge. It was just good business. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.